Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Brahmanandam Param Sukhadam Kevalam Jnanamurtim Dvandvatitam Gagana Sadrisham Tattvamasya Lakshyam Ekam Nityam Vimalamachalam Sarvadhi Sakshi Bhutam Bhavatitam Triguna-rahitam Sadgurum Tam Namami. Om. Adorations to Sadguru, who is Brahman, the giver of supreme bliss, embodiment of pure consciousness, one without a second, vast as the ether, infinite, eternal, beyond the three gunas and their modifications, the supreme preceptor. Yoga Vasistha, Stithi Prakarana, section 24. The importance of attaining victory over the mind and senses. Vasishtha continued, O Rama, enemies in the form of the senses are very difficult to conquer. If mind and senses are not under control, then the soul is harassed by Shad-ripus, 6 enemies: Kama, perverted desires, Krodha, anger, Lobha, greed, Moha, delusion, Mada, conceit or pride, and Matsarya, is jealousy. Jealousy that haunts the mind like a machar. Mosquitoes. And out of these enemies, Kama, Krodha and Lobha, they lead the soul to the gateways to hell. Kama, subtle desires, not subtle as well as gross, whichever way. Anger, greed. If mind is constantly driven by these impurities, then you are heading towards hell. Hell is not anywhere else to go. Wherever you are deprived of inner joy, inner sense of fulfillment, satisfaction. Living a purposeless life in a helpless manner. That's called hell. And that's called Yatana Marg. We have 3 paths, speaking from a very broad point of view. One is called Uttarayana. It's a Krama Mukti. You are led progressively towards your freedom. And just to remind you few points, Agni Jyotirmayananda Shukla, you begin to develop vairagya, dispassion. Dispassion not as a disease. Sometimes you begin to hate things and you don't want to look at it. That's not dispassion. Dispassion arising out of a healthy development of your soul. That's called Agni, fire. Fire has now been kindled in your soul. So you are looking for where is the end of pain. Should I live in vain? Or should I put an end to the pain? So, the next, continuing this fire, Agni Jyoti. Jyoti means Viveka Buddhi, discriminative intellect that begins to see the difference between the path leading to liberation, the path that leads to pleasure, Shreya and Preya. And Vivek that is effective in your daily life, from morning till night. As long as you use your intellect, you have always the possibility, rather, you have always the opportunity before you of a choice in every little thing. The smallest little thing, you see a cup near you, you have a choice, use your right hand or your left hand. Put all the fingers together, all it use only two. So, that choice movement becomes highly advanced. Spontaneously you choose to be on the right side. It's not difficult to understand. If you are a good doctor and you have done a lot of work, then dealing with a patient, instead of going into looking into all the Google and many other details, you simply look into the eyes and say, oh, this is the medicine, take it. I'm giving you a simple joking way to say, implying your mind is able to judge in a profound way without making mistakes. That's called Vivek Buddhi. Buddhi begins to operate. Always understand that everything is progressive. If your mind two months back was constantly burdened by dull-wit intellect, and now you find your intellect is spurring up at least 3 days a week. So you are advancing. Agni Jyoti. If Vivek begins to advance, your whole interest goes after truth and falsehood. What is truth? You are on the side of truth, not on the side of falsehood. Satyameva jayate. If you are on the side of truth, your victory is sure. On the side of falsehood, it's a perfect defeat. So in daily life, you have a choice. Certain situation has caused problem in your mind. You have a choice, sit back and imagine your problem, send your mind to despair. No repair, just despair. Thereby you are accepting the fact that negativity is real. Don't accept that. That's called satyagraha. Insist on the positive truth, no matter whatever may be the situation. Insist Even if you are unable to handle the situation, feel completely burdened, at least raise your finger. Do something about it. Go on insisting, day by day, dealing with relatives, and find constantly you are building up hatred or kind of bitter type of relationship. Now you are allowing unreal to dominate your mind. But with a more higher level of understanding, God has provided you with the challenge. They are loved ones around you. Every soul is ray of God. So even though you are again and again being put into a negative situation, insist to see a frozen face wakes up. Bitter eyes smile. Wolfy teeth hide. I'm joking. That insistence on the positive. And that becomes easier as you begin to develop love of God. That you are constantly sustained by God. So you are not just left in a helpless way. So with God behind you, go after the truth. Truth is Sat Chit Ananda. Absolute security, Sat, that cannot be shaken. Absolute knowledge, absolute bliss. So, if you have that, your daily life becomes enjoyable, purposeful. It may not appear like you are dancing from morning till evening. You may be facing many distressing situations, but yet your days are not passing by in vain. You are learning, you are gaining something. And so at a deeper level, it is something very substantial. You are learning lessons day by day. Agni Jyoti Shukla then opens up purity of feeling within your heart. The firmament of the heart brings out a moon of joy that goes on waxing and becomes like the full moon. It is all allegorical and poetic way of describing the highest path. If you adopt this, now your consciousness goes on expanding. You go through these steps, ascending steps to the highest realization. All is Brahman. That's the truth, the highest truth, the real truth behind the entire creation. Brahma Satyam Jagan Mithya. Brahman alone is real. The entire world is mithya, illusion. Because the entire world is based on your mind. And your mind is working upon your nervous system. Think of it in a very gross way. All that you are depending upon in this world is from the little brain, a little threads coming out of it. That mystically technical iPad, that's all you have. And all the world that you are studying, past, present, future, they all come from the little nervous system rooted in the brain. So therefore, nowhere in this there is reality, absolute truth. Deep down, essentially you are Brahman. You're not dependent upon what the brain is bringing out to you. You're not dependent upon what the mind is interpreting about you. You are completely different. That vision has to be brought in your life, persistent. All the miseries are there, all right, I am Brahman. Satyagraha. All the cause is there for your being angry. But so no more anger. Love. All the insult you have received that requires for you to say harsh words. But Sati said, no more harsh words. How wonderful these people are. They have used their tongue. Divine in them is operating through it. How wonderful they look. I'm joking, but trying to give you a deeper understanding. What we mean Satyagraha. Adverse situations come, face them with practical details, leave no stone unturned, but at a deeper level, don't permit them to, as a reality that is harassing your soul. Rather, all this will pass away. Each time the cloud moves away from the moon, or the moon sails across a dark cloud, each time shines brighter. So that type of movement is called Satyagraha. You are insisting on the truth, not persisting with falsehood. So this is the highest path. The next one, led by virtuous qualities. But without that viveka buddhi and vairagya, dispassion, your mind is being led to stay in the world of time and space, led by karma. But good karma, so that you have better families to come in, and there you feel your success. That's called Dakshinayana path, the southern path. The worst path is Yatana Marg. Yatana is a path, gross way saying, is a path to hell. It's in purposeless suffering. These enemies of the soul, desire, anger, greed, and so forth, they are the rulers over terrible hells and are endowed with the hellish armaments. They are ruthless ingrates that are abiding in the body and collecting the treasures of worldly impressions. These are ingrates, these are thieves. So if you permit anger, greed, hate to stay on, you can imagine. You have permitted thieves without knowing what they are capable of doing. They are highway robbers. And due to the presence of those impurities, one continues to create worldly samskaras, worldly impressions, impressions of good and evil karmas. Endowed with the wings of good and evil karmas, they are like vultures abiding in the nest of the body, ever pursuing the rotting pleasures of the flesh. Yoga Vasistha doesn't have any nice words. Endowed with the wealth of vivek, discriminative knowledge. The vivek is not ordinary intellectual knowledge, but intellect has gone through a mind that has developed dispassion, maturity of experience, charged by satsanga. So in that satsanga type of influence, satsanga charged mind, now it uses intellect not ordinarily, but intellect that has mystic insight. It is in Mahabharata, Yudhishthira with his spear. It has a spear in its hand and finds out what the error is and cuts down the error. Endowed with the wealth of viveka, he who has enslaved the senses and mastered the mind. There comes a stage by devil as you advance. The mind and senses go on giving you all these experiences of pleasure and pain. But no matter how much they give, you are in a position of witnessing them. You have a sakshi state. You are not completely immersed in them. There is a vertical view that you develop within yourself. So try to understand that point. For the masses, there is no vertical view. So anything happens, you are completely immersed in it. It leads to a complete despair and a state of being absolutely helpless. As you continue your sadhana, you are not completely helpless. You begin to study your situation. Turn to your mind and say, oh, the mind has become negative, but not as negative as it was 5 days back. The method I used 5 days back, I know better method now. So you are able to handle these alternating experiences of pleasure and pain. In both ways, the mind turns to an irrational way of acting. And you have an overview over it and don't allow the mind to become too elated or too distressed, but allow the mind to remain serene. And while in serenity, open a channel towards God, a window to God movement. So your deepest purpose is to connect yourself with God. And still deeper, realize you are a ray of God. And the final, God alone is. So in this process, mind and senses that were like your highway robbers, now they are highway friends. And the intellect blooms like spring flowers Intellect can give you amazing colors in your life. Just like the rays of the sun suddenly become rainbows and create such amazing drama. Same intellect that constantly creates negative pictures if you are not advanced. Now the intellect, you got just a little sattva, but intellect developed a big view. I'm a swan soaring to the full moon. I'm sitting in the moon, showering goodwill. So that's what we mean by your intellect blooms. That doesn't leave you in gloom. He who has become detached even from the chitta, the mind stuff, a profounder insight begins to develop that all the experience that you get in the world, as the mind gets purified, as the light of God begins to pass through the cloud of your chitta, the unconscious, how all your experiences become so profound. But profoundest when a mind completely unconscious, completely dissolves. Simple mathematics. If light coming through the cloud is giving you a lot of fun, when cloud moves away, your fun will be not funny. It will be full. So, a subtle aspiration for paravairagya, for completely negating the world process. Just like I have described in a cinema show, a change in the scene resolves your problem. But that's a minor, superficial cure. The real cure, draw away all the projection from the screen. Let the screen alone exist. That's called paravairagya, parabhakti, supreme. But that level is reached by gradual movement. So he who has become detached even from the chitta, the mind stuff, joyously watches the subtle desires dissolve, even like mist before the rising sun. For a person who is endowed with wisdom, his mind becomes like an obedient slave. See your relationship with the mind. How much you enjoy sense of fulfillment in life, that depends upon your mind. If mind is not positive, though everything positive around you, doesn't matter. If mind is not positive, you are completely deprived of happiness. Now, allegorically describing that mind which has constantly kept you in a state of diffidence, state of despair, state of stress, that mind now becomes your very faithful servant. With profound knowledge behind it. not ordinary mind. You don't want just any servant, no matter how good. Mind becomes your inspiring associate. Mind becomes like an obedient slave, like a trusted counselor, like a valiant general over the army of the senses. All things, you live in a city, this whole body is a 9-gated city. And there are so many forces around. And in a subtle way, you deal with armies of negative forces. But now, pure mind acts like a general. And pure mind tells you, stay calm. Master, don't worry. I will handle it. To a wise sage, the purified mind is his beloved consort, his affectionate father or mother, or his trustworthy friend. So, same mind that has been the source of trouble day by day, life after life. Now, your relation with your mind is very profound, cozy, joyous, divine, loving. If that state is reached, that is what is called you have controlled your mind. Your positive thinking has come to climax. And that's sadhana, a miracle that develops as love of God advances. Mind goes after the taste of joy, pleasure. As long as its mind is not under control, the pleasure is transient pleasure. Pleasure is not real pleasure. So the mind goes after that type of experience of pleasure, which keeps you in a state of karmic bondage. But as you advance, the mind becomes highly cultured, a divine friend. Instead of leading you to pleasure that's like mirage, it leads to the joy of the self, ananda. The world process abounds with numerous evils. It is enveloped in the mist of delusion, is the source of limitless afflictions. Therefore, O Rama, do not relax your vigilance while sojourning through this world. What does it imply? Do not relax your effort to control your mind and senses and turn your mind as your pet, or better still, your friend. Do not operate in an indiscriminate manner. Always recognize the value of your intellect, what your intellect says, not in an intellectual way, but in a profound way. Acquire discriminative knowledge, which becomes possible by firstly by your satsanga, secondly as you begin to practice sadhana in your daily life, you begin integral yoga in your life. Whether you call it integral or not doesn't matter. Yogic movement that integrates your thinking, your feeling, your willing, your acting. When this integration goes on developing, you are a yogi. And as you become more and more involved in the practice of yoga in life, your intellect begins to help you to master your mind and senses. So you live in this personality not as a servant, not as a helpless person being led by robbers, but to live in this world as Lord and the Master. You will cross the ocean of the world process. The world that's like a big ocean. And for souls that are not advanced, it's the ocean that is giving countless situations of experiencing drowning situation, buffeted by hot currents and different types of challenges. But if you have controlled your mind and senses, you are in the nicest ship, not ordinary relationship. Ship where in tune with God. If you have that type of ship, you cross over this world process. Bhavasagar Santarana. Give up the erroneous notion, I am the body and this world is real. This is the big project before every mind. Understand and say, I am not the body, doesn't mean that we ignore the body. The notion, I am the body and the world is real. That notion is the source of all negative emotions, all negativity. But then that's the practical reality of all humanity. The body is real, the world is real. But if you are following a spiritual path, the goal before you to understand body is not your reality. Just like sometimes people love their clothes, the fashionable clothes you found after so much money being spent. Now, if someone takes that cloth away, it's like death. The body is very similar. Body is for a purpose. So utilize the purpose. The body is your temple. Succeed in accomplishing communion with God through the body. But never stay with the idea, I am the body. With all scientific progress and all the clever mind, for anybody to assert, I am the body is completely stupid. Which body you are? I am the body, you are a child. You grew up, your body has gone through countless changes. The body with which you came is not there, not a single cell. So which is the body? You are saying, I am the body. So give up the erroneous notion, I am the body. And the notion the world is real. Again, with all the science people study, the simple thing that doesn't get into the mind, that what you consider real, led by your senses, is a senseless perception. Because your senses are all limited. Not as the eyes are not absolute eyes. Vultures look better than human beings. Your nose is not so absolute. There are animals that can smell 6 miles away. Your ears are not absolute. So all your senses, whatsoever all the senses put together, whatever they bring to you as a reality, that's not real. The world you are experiencing is not real because of that fact. And then another level of reality. Whatever senses have brought in, the mind evaluates and studies them depending upon the way it has been fashioned through karmas. So first point, the things you are experiencing, they are not real. Now, this unreal has another extension of lots of bhranti bhavana, lots of delusional feeling. Therefore, the goal of life is to discover who am I, not stay with the normal type of perception based on mind and senses. Assert and discover the truth that all this is Brahman. Pure consciousness is absolute. That absolute is being refracted as it were in the form of the world of Maya, the world of illusion. All this is Brahman. All this is I am. Imagine the awareness of I am, how harassed, how miserable, how constantly in distress compared to the reality. I alone am. I am absolute. I am that, am I. I am this, am I. To I am that, am I. That's the only difference from this to that. Endowed with this wisdom, perform your daily duties. So figure out your I am and then let things flow. You will be ever established in the self. Though eating, drinking, going, coming, you will remain untouched by the miseries of the world. That's called the characteristic of a Jivan Mukta, liberated sage. How does he walk? How does he move? And the answer is, he does all those things. But deep down, he is like the ocean. Ocean continues to receive lots of water coming into it. But ocean has neither need for that, nor ocean is anyway affected or influenced by all this. If you have ocean-like awareness, senses are bringing in little channels of water. Mind, senses, all they bring in to the ocean, there are few little drops. In other words, deep down you have an experience that does not depend upon your senses and the mind. Sri Vasishtha continued, O Rama, you should not follow the conduct of Dama, Bala and Kata, but follow the examples of Bhima, Bhasa and Dridha. They're going to be given a story, a parable. I will tell you their stories. And after having heard them, decide for yourself what is best. In the Patala Loka, Patala Loka is nether world, not the European nether world. There ruled a valiant demon king known as Shambara. You must realize it's a story. Whenever stories are told, you wait, don't go through every detail. It says the crow early in the morning with meat in the beak and the sun shining and a fox very hungry sees the meat in the beak. So the crows start saying, oh beautiful crow, I've never seen anyone so beautiful and shiny. Surely your voice will be wonderful. And the crow immediately opens its beak to show his voice. And the moment it does, the meat comes down, fox takes it and says goodbye. When you hear that, you don't ask, which forest was that? What type of crow was that? What type of fox? Forget about all this. Understand the moral. So similarly, this is a kind of a story, parable. There is, beginning with the demon king Shambara, who had such amazing powers that he could create demons of different types. Demons are possessing different minds. He had created gardens in the sky, built magic houses for the demons, and even provided this world with an artificial sun and moon. he had collected the best of treasures from the three worlds. He had a powerful army of terrible demons who had defeated the gods many times. But whenever he had to go away to some distant land, or whenever he slept deeply, gods would devastate his army. And although he appointed the best of generals to manage and lead the army, during these times even they were destroyed by the gods. In other words, the demon was working on how to create generals who will not be defeated by gods. So first he figures out what makes them defeated. And he came to the conclusion, the vasanas. The created people, if he were to create demon generals with a completely empty slate, without vasanas, mind that is just free of any restriction, unconscious, free of any restriction. So that's what he does. Desirous of having perpetual supremacy over the gods, Shambhara devised a wise plan. By the force of his Maya, he created three terrible demons. Dhamma, destroyer of all enemies. That's the literal meaning. Dhamma implies general that is completely opposed to Dhamma. Dhamma is controlling the mind and senses. But this demon has nothing to do about controlling the mind and senses. If you are afflicted by Dhamma, you will not be able to control your mind and senses. Vyala, venomous like a snake. A demon with a impure vasanas. Vasanas act like snakes. But must realize when I'm giving you another interpretation, don't get confused. From Shambhara point of view, he has made these demons completely empty of vasana. So if they are defeated, they never feel miserable. They are not hurt. If it is vasana in you that makes you feel hurt or glorified, praise and censure both become important if you have vasana in your mind. If you don't have, you are not pressured by vasana, you are like a tree, just whichever way the wind blows, you just continue. So these three demons are Dhamma, Vyala and Kata. Dhamma is that aspect which destroys your ability to control the mind and senses. Vyala is that type of vasana that envenoms your sense of pleasure. Kata restricts your Kriya Shakti. You are unable to exercise your self-effort. So these negative qualities, they are the demoniac generals, Dhamma, Vyala, Kata. Being magically projected, these three demons were without prior vasanas, and they solely followed the dictates of King Shambhara. They were unaffected by victory or defeat. They pursued their enemy without fear of death or mental confusion. The gods waged a terrible war against these three demons but failed. The demons pursued the gods, but they hid themselves in obscure places. And then these demons, supremely victorious, these three great generals returned to the king Shambhara and reported the total defeat of the gods. In the meantime, God sought the assistance of Brahma. Just to give you a quick insight into what future is bringing, Brahma tells the secret lies. Firstly, they are not defeated because they have no vasanas. The ego in them does not move this way or that way. So if you could engender ego in them, awaken ego, they will be defeated. So now gods come with a plan. And the very first attack, gods cry out, encouraging the demons for the sense of their victory. The gods run away like frightened rabbits. But that's an act. And then they come back and praise that we have this type of battle for a long time but never seen generals like you. You are so powerful. And now this time gods hit them very hard. And when they are being hit, say, oh, we thought you were very great people. Your heads are sinking down. The moment you subject a person to praise and censure, reacting to positive and negative, that becomes the basis of your defeat. The lower self now conquers you. That's brought into this storyline, and we will continue tomorrow. Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushti Vardhanam Urvargma Bandhanan Mrityor Mukshyamamritat Sarve Bhavantu Sukhina Sarve Santu Niramaya Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu Ma Kaschid Dukha Bhag Bhavet. Om Shanti Shanti.